The Spray had barely come to anchor at Montevideo when the agents of the Royal Mail Steamship Company, Messrs. Humphreys and Co., sent word that they would dock and repair her free of expense, and give me £20 sterling, which they did to the letter, and more besides. The caulkers at Montevideo paid very careful attention to the work of making the sloop tight. Carpenters mended the keel and also the lifeboat, painting it till I hardly knew it from a butterfly. Christmas of 1895 found the Spray refitted, even to a wonderful makeshift stove, which was contrived from a large iron drum of some sort, punched full of holes to give it a draught. The pipe reached straight up through the top of the forecastle. Now this was not a stove by mere courtesy. It was always hungry, even for green wood. And in cold, wet days off the coast of Tierra del Fuego, it stood me in good stead. Its one door swung on copper hinges, which one of the yard apprentices, with laudable pride, polished till the whole thing blushed like the brass binnacle of a P&O steamer. The Spray was now ready for sea. Instead of proceeding at once on her voyage, however, she made an excursion up the river, sailing December 29. An old friend of mine, Captain Howard of Cape Cod and of River Plate fame, took the trip in her to Buenos Aires, where she arrived early on the following day, with a gale of wind and a current so much in her favour that she outdid herself. I was glad to have a sailor of Howard's experience on board, to witness her performance of sailing with no living being at the helm. Howard sat near the binnacle and watched the compass while the sloop held her course so steadily that one would have declared that the card was nailed fast. Not a quarter of a point did she deviate from her course. My old friend had owned and sailed a pilot sloop on the river for many years, but this feat took the wind out of his sails at last, and he cried, "I'll be stranded on Chico Bank if I ever saw the like of it." Perhaps he had never given his sloop a chance to show what she could do. The point I make for the Spray here, above all other points, is that she sailed in shoal water and in a strong current, with other difficult and unusual conditions. Captain Howard took all this into account. In all the years away from his native home, Howard had not forgotten the art of making fish chowders, and to prove this he brought along some fine rockfish and prepared a mess fit for kings. When the savoury chowder was done, chocking the pot securely between two boxes on the cabin floor so that it could not roll over, we helped ourselves and swapped yarns over it while the Spray made her own way through the darkness on the river. Howard told me stories about the Fuegian cannibals as she reeled along, and I told him about the pilot of the Pinta steering my vessel through the storm off the coast of the Azores, and that I looked for him at the helm in a gale such as this. I do not charge Howard with superstition. We are none of us superstitious. But when I spoke about his returning to Montevideo on the Spray, he shook his head and took a steam packet instead. I had not been in Buenos Aires for a number of years. The place where I had once landed from packets in a cart was now built up with magnificent docks. Vast fortunes had been spent in remodelling the harbour. London bankers could tell you that. The port captain, after assigning the Spray a safe berth with his compliments, sent me word to call on him for anything I might want while in port, and I felt quite sure that his friendship was sincere. The sloop was well cared for at Buenos Aires. Her dockage and tonnage dues were all free, and the yachting fraternity of the city welcomed her with a good will. In town I found things not so greatly changed as about the docks, and I soon felt myself more at home. From Montevideo I had forwarded a letter from Sir Edward Hareby to the owner of the Standard, Mr. Mulhall, and in reply to it was assured of a warm welcome to the warmest heart, I think, outside of Ireland. Mr. Mulhall, with a prancing team, came down to the docks as soon as the Spray was berthed, and would have me go to his house at once, where a room was waiting, and it was New Year's Day, 1896. The course of the Spray had been followed in the columns of the Standard. Mr. Mulhall kindly drove me to see many improvements about the city, and we went in search of some of the old landmarks. The man who sold lemonade on the plaza, when first I visited this wonderful city, I found selling lemonade still at 2 cents a glass. He had made a fortune by it. His stock in trade was a wash-tub and a neighbouring hydrant, a moderate supply of brown sugar, and about 6 lemons that floated on the sweetened water. The water from time to time was renewed from the friendly pump, but the lemon went on forever, and all at 2 cents a glass. But we looked in vain for the man who once sold whisky and coffins in Buenos Aires. The march of civilization had crushed him. Memory only clung to his name. Enterprising man that he was, I fain would have looked him up. I remember the tiers of whisky barrels ranged on end on one side of the store, while on the other side, and divided by a thin partition, were the coffins in the same order, of all sizes and in great numbers. The unique arrangement seemed in order, for as a cask was emptied, a coffin might be filled. Besides cheap whisky and many other liquors, he sold cider, which he manufactured from damaged Malaga raisins. Within the scope of his enterprise was also the sale of mineral waters, not entirely blameless of the germs of disease. This man surely catered to all tastes, wants, and conditions of his customers. Farther along in the city, however, survived the good man who wrote on the side of his store, where thoughtful men might read and learn, "This wicked world will be destroyed by a comet. The owner of this store is therefore bound to sell out at any price and avoid the catastrophe." My friend Mr. Mulhall drove me round to view the fearful comet with streaming tail, pictured large on the trembling merchant's walls. I unshipped the sloop's mast at Buenos Aires and shortened it by 7 feet. I reduced the length of the bowsprit by about 5 feet, and even then I found it reaching far enough from home, and more than once, when on the end of it reefing the jib, I regretted that I had not shortened it another foot.